want to welcome everybody to the Epay Manager powered by OTR Solutions webinar, where we'll be covering the power of precision and how Epay reduces billing and settlement inaccuracies by 99%. I'm Clayton Griffin.
I'm Jason Kirkpatrick.
So we surveyed more than 100 brokers coming into this webinar, and 7 out of 10 of them said that their biggest problem was inaccurate information and incomplete documents.
Correct. Yep, big problem.
Going into the billing process. So we feel like, it's an issue that isn't talked about a ton, but it's something that brokers from, very, very small brokers to very, very large brokers that are looking to scale their business, add on a ton of new customers. The unique thing about freight brokerage is that every single invoice, every single load that you move for a customer has a coordinated carrier payable associated with it.
That's right. And the other issue is transparency to get those documents and to know the statuses from the carrier side and the broker side. They need to know what's missing, when something's going to happen, and that communication can be a big time suck for any broker.
Absolutely. So while everybody focuses on that front end, how do I service my customer? How do I accomplish the things that are crucial to making sure that the load is delivered and I'm delivering value to my customer? On the end of that transaction is also, how do I ensure that I'm facilitating awesome carrier relationships? How do I make sure that the efficiency of my back office is actually deepening the relationships with my capacity partners, which in turn allows brokers to serve their customers better?
Right. Yeah. You have to have a good relationship with the carrier. You have to make it easy to work with you as a broker in order for them to want to come back and work with you and help service your customer.
Absolutely. So I think we want to dig into, a question, the overall question that we're asking today is, how much time are you spending to resolve invoice inaccuracies? How much time is your team getting pulled out of their workflow, getting pulled out of their day to try and resolve something that could be solved with transparency and visibility if you were able to provide that to your carrier partners? So we're going to dig into, the fact that most brokers are probably spending too much time doing that type of stuff.
Absolutely.
And how do you offload that human workload and that time to a platform that does it without any human interaction whatsoever?
And we're going to talk about how you can reduce your billing and settlement inaccuracies by 99% today.
Awesome. So to kick it off, like I said, my name is Clayton Griffin. I'm EVP and Chief Strategy Officer at OTR Solutions. I've been at OTR since 2012, shortly after we were founded, and I'm super happy to be joined today by Jason Kirkpatrick.
And I'm Jason Kirkpatrick. Thanks for having me, Clayton. I'm Director of Operations for Epay Manager. I was one of the founders of Epay Manager and have helped develop all the different iterations of the software over the 2 decades of development. And we're excited to join forces with OTR.
Absolutely. And what's most exciting, I think, about for OTR, about bringing Epay into the OTR family is the fact that, like Jason said, they've been doing this since the turn of the century. So they've seen all kinds of freight markets. They've seen good, the bad, the ugly. I think the one constant is that, like we talked about, you're always going to need to service your capacity partners if you want to have that high level of customer service to your end customers. And that's, the ability for the Epay team to add continual updates to the platform to accommodate the needs of really large brokerages to really small brokerages, and the simplicity that the platform brings to the table while being able to accommodate the complexity. We all know how complex brokerages are, right? Yeah. Everybody does things a little different. Everybody has a little different components that make up their secret sauce. Mm-hmm. And Epay distills that all down and makes it an extremely usable and friendly UI that takes a lot of that complexity out of the equation and makes it very simple to use.
And that's one of the difficulties of all those years of development. It's hard to make something complex look simple, right?
Right.
And we have to make the system work for every carrier. The smallest carrier that's a one-man operation out of his truck, all the way to the largest fleets and everybody in between, including the factoring companies that utilize the software.
And every broker. Every broker has different capacity partners. Right. Brokerages are, some work with larger carriers by nature. Some of them work with smaller.
Correct.
Some of them work with the whole gamut. We have brokers on the platform that are working with car haulers or LTL carriers. So the breadth of kind of functionality that Epay brings to the table and the questions that it really answers for brokerages of all sizes and shapes was super intriguing to us, and we're excited to dig in today. So excited today to be actually diving into the platform, doing a demo of several of the Epay modules that solve for that overarching objective of reducing inaccurate billing and settlements by 99%. So we're going to be doing a live demo of the platform. We're going to be walking through the functionality, and we're going to be really showing how easy it is for users to be able to capitalize on the efficiency that Epay brings to the table. And
we'll end with some live questions and answers from the audience. So
so
get those questions ready.
That's right. Get your questions in. We're excited to answer them.
What is Epay? Epay was founded in 2003. We're a back office automation and carrier payments and billing platform. We really try to help automate the back office for any broker. As Clayton said before, any broker, large, small, or in between. Everybody has complex issues, and we help solve their AP problems, which in turn help automate their AR and billing process.
It really is that focus and that expertise that Epay has had, 2 decades to lean into and solve for, that makes it a really great solution for brokerages of all shapes and sizes. A little bit about OTR Solutions. Formerly OTR Capital, as some of you might know us, but we were founded in 2011 with an initial focus of serving kind of the small and medium-sized carrier market. Over the course of the next kind of 10 plus years, we've expanded our service offerings and solutions both to carriers and now to freight brokerages. We realized that there are multiple sides of the fence when you're talking about supply chain. There's a lot of documents being passed back and forth. There's a lot of auditing. There's a lot of what we feel is duplicative work. And so we've been kind of working really hard to try and drive efficiency into those processes. And if one player that we come in contact with is already doing the work, then how can we leverage that for the benefit of everybody else in the supply chain? So Epay obviously is really focused on brokerage, which obviously we've been working with freight brokers since 2011. We see a lot of that data, and we're able to apply our capital solutions and the work that we've done around AI and NLP to the existing, best-in-class efficiency and back-office automation workflows that Epay already has. And another thing that really excited us about the Epay platform is that, Epay approaches carrier invoicing very similarly to how OTR approaches it. 60% of our invoices in 2017 were received via email from carriers. Today, that number is less than 1%. And so what we found is that carrier adoption into platforms that provide this level of visibility and transparency and interactivity is something that not only they're willing to do, but they're actually excited to do. Because at the end of the day, they don't want to have to make the phone calls. They don't want to have to make the emails more than anybody else. And so if they can log in, see that the invoice is received, see that we're working on it, see any issues, that transparency. And so when we looked at Epay and really started digging into the capabilities, that was something that was really attractive. And I felt like, the reason we're such good friends now.
Right, exactly. Yeah, on top of that, just to add that we email the carrier, even though we talk about email into the system, email out is a big part of it, because if you don't want to log in as a carrier or a factor, you can get those notifications of what's happening. Are there issues? When am I going to get paid? Did it get approved? All those things are being pushed out to the carrier automatically.
Absolutely. Back to the flexibility. You're giving carriers options, and historically we've seen that carriers love to have that optionality. And along those same lines, as we've been working together even over this short period of time since the beginning of the year, we've done some pretty significant studies with large multi-billion-dollar brokerages and found that greater than 95% of their carriers and factoring companies are already active users in Epay.
Right.
And so Epay has done a fantastic job of building that carrier base, driving that adoption, and I think it's a really good case study for the fact that carriers are hungry for that visibility and transparency.
Yeah. I remember the days when it was 10%.
So, Right. So we've talked about it a little bit, Jason. I'd love to get your feedback because I know it wasn't always, you guys weren't always in the position, right? You really have to work really hard to gain the market adoption and become an established industry leader like Epay has over the last 20 plus years, we can see that there are 100,000 plus carriers in the platform today. You guys are processing hundreds and hundreds of, or I should say we are processing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of transactions to the tune of billions in freight spend a year. What was that process like, and how have you guys gone about building up that market share and building up that reputation as an industry leader?
Sure. It was tough. I mean, the early years were, we were ahead of the curve, and you can see in our system we still have we had faxes. We started that way. That was the only way to get documents in our system.
Just about flexibility at the end of the day.
It's all about
trying to
flexibility.
provide options.
So you add more and more options as you gain technology, as you gain ideas, as you find other ways to solve problems. So getting those first set of carriers and brokers was tough, but they were lessons learned that allowed us to get to where we are with over 100,000 carriers and factors and billions in payments, and all the different flexibility that we've built in from those early days of faxing and presenting over the internet to now automating really in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and I think we experienced the same thing at OTR, right? The bumping your head and running into issues and running through the maze trying to figure out the best route to take or the best turn to make is generally the way that you learn. And as long as you're willing to listen to customers, make changes, update the platform, your customers are the ones that ultimately benefit. And so that time and kind of continual one foot in front of the other, I think is an awesome way to approach it. And it pays dividends, obviously, in the market adoption that the platform sees today.
And every customer and every carrier that we gained, we learned something from and added into the system. And every broker that comes into the system today, or carrier or factor, benefits from those. It's
additions. Not a one-size-fits-all industry. There's no such thing as a carrier that does things the exact same way or a broker that does things the exact same way. So we've touched on that flexibility. We've touched on that transparency and that control. And that's really critical, because without control and without the ability to change how a carrier interacts with you, how a factor interacts with you, or how you're ultimately interacting with your customers, then you're not able to provide that highest level of customer service that I think everybody is aspiring to.
And our philosophy has always been, we want to empower a broker to be able to say yes to any carrier request, any customer request. And that's what we do.
That's awesome.
Part of our process over the years was integrating with TMS platforms. Our data, we haven't really talked about how this works, but we are powered by the data that comes from our TMSs.
That's the power of precision, right?
The power of precision.
There's nothing more precise than a broker's true source of truth, which is ultimately their TMS.
Right. So we start with that TMS data, we allow some processes to happen to Epay, and it goes back to that TMS. So without our partners, we wouldn't be able to accomplish what we wanted to accomplish. And they're a key part of our growth as well.
Yeah, trying to get out of the world of passing CSVs and FTPs and unreliable kind of ad hoc data exchange to something that is more connected. I think that's really where you can leverage a lot of that efficiency, is constant data exchange. And that's facilitated via Epay and TMS, so that once that relationship is established, it's really in constant communication, and the broker is never going to have to shore up or update or make sure that their data is in sync. Right? As opposed to some legacy platforms, you're passing data via Excel files back and forth, and it gets a little squirrely. You might mispay somebody, you might miss an assignment, you might change a bank account incorrectly. All those things kind of go away in Epay.
Thing that we do that's different is we create what we call an audit-proof invoice. And what does that mean? It means that we take data directly from the broker's TMS to create the carrier's invoice, instead of relying on the carrier's invoice the way that most brokers do today.
And that's huge. That applies to factoring companies too. I can tell you, it was funny when we were first kind of going through the process. My name was actually kind of the contact for OTR at Epay, because when I came into OTR to begin with, I was on the accounts receivable side. And I just remember kind of the transparency and ability to go in and see, all right, well, this is what the broker wants to pay us or is planning to pay us. And so I know what we can pay our carrier, right? And so there isn't this need to make those phone calls and those emails to verify rates. And the fact that it's tied into the TMS, I always knew it was accurate. So not only on the front end, but also on the back end, when we were going in and verifying payment status, making sure everything was good to go, Epay, and we actually polled during the kind of diligence process, our current accounts receivable group. What platform do you enjoy working out of the most? What platform do you get the most efficiency out of? Because we essentially operate like a carrier's back office. That's what we're taking off their plate on our carrier factoring side. So the ability for us to see what a broker wants to pay us on the front end is just invaluable. When we're going through that process, we need to have confidence in order to deliver the ultimate experience to our carriers. We don't want to pay them, too little. We don't want to short pay them. And so if there's money left on the table, we need to know about it. And Epay provides that transparency for us.
Right. When you start with that data, you eliminate a lot of unnecessary work from both the factor, the carrier, and the broker. And you can do that by pushing that data out to the carrier or factory shortly after delivery, which prompts the carrier for document submission. We link those documents directly to the invoice, which saves manual steps from the broker who can create errors. We manage.
And there's multiple ways to do that too, right?
Correct.
Multiple ways to get documents into the platform, which I think we touched on that a little bit. Fax is one, thankfully not used as much as it used to be. But the upload component is big for kind of your smaller carriers. But for instance, us as a factoring company and many other factoring companies use an integration where we're able to send those invoices over in mass, and they can be directly tagged and tied to the appropriate invoice in the Epay platform.
Right. So the brokers, the end result is they have the invoice and the document on one screen already matched together, which removes that manual linking.
And that's really the first time that the broker sees it.
Right.
Once it's already been matched, once it's already been assigned, and critically, once the carrier has already, or factor has already accepted the amount that the broker wants to pay them. So this concept of carrier acceptance, the upfront handshake that says, hey, I'm ABC carrier working with XYZ broker, and you want to pay me $1,000? I agree, I should be paid $1,000. And so by the time the broker sees this, they have the correct paperwork uploaded, and they know that the carrier rate is correct. So you eliminate all those short pays on the back end, and maybe even more important, you eliminate going back to your customers and saying, hey, we missed a detention time, $200, then you got to make a business decision as a broker. You got to say, do I want to pay the carrier the $200 and come out of pocket? Or do I want to go to my customer and rebill them 45 days after the load delivered?
Which can affect a relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Epay takes away a lot of that uncertainty by getting the carrier or factory to agree to that amount before the payment or dispute it before the payment so that you can take that corrective action when you bill your customer. And Epay does automate the billing to the customer as well, which is another unique element to our system.
The dispute aspect of it is huge, especially for enterprise brokers, right? As they're trying to scale their operations. As we talked about, nothing's perfect in logistics. Very few invoices or loads go exactly how they should. Or even if they do, you want to be able to identify those needles in the haystacks without having to dig through all the haystacks.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what a normal broker does today, they are trying to validate every single invoice, and they're comparing those external invoices against their TMS data, which means they're looking at 100% of their transactions before payment goes out. Epay removes 99% of that by starting with their TMS data, which we already know is a source of truth, and allowing those disputes, that 1% or less with most of our brokers, to just be the focal point of their workflow.
And despite the fact that disputes don't happen a ton, they have a really big impact.
Yes.
Nobody wants to go back to a customer and say, hey, I messed up, or I missed a detention, or I missed a lumper, or we overpaid a carrier. If that happens once or twice, we're talking, brokers moving hundreds of thousands of loads a month. And so 1% or 2%, despite the fact that it's a small number, can have a material impact on the customer relationship that broker has.
Right. Correct. We talked about the survey we did earlier in the introduction about what the main broker pain points are. We have a lot of other pain points that are on the slide right now that we won't need to go through because I'm sure they're familiar with a lot of our audience. But the two main ones, again, are inaccurate or incomplete documents, and then the transparency to the carrier or factor about when payments are happening.
Yeah.
Epay removes all those two pain points and more. Yep.
And I think the big thing is, as we said, all brokers are different and all brokers have various pain points, So if you, I'm sure there are a lot of people on the webinar who are constantly, who spend a lot of their day fielding calls and emails from carriers and factoring companies. Right. I know we spend as a factoring company too much time and can be probably a nuisance to brokerages trying to verify rates and check payment status. How many hours is your team spending auditing paperwork or trying to match invoices that you receive in an email inbox to the appropriate load in your TMS? How many, Drew Bingham, our CTO, loves the term swivel chair integration. How many swivel chair integrations does your team have where they're bouncing back and forth from platform to platform, TMS, right. I'm updating data here, I'm updating data there, I have to make sure it's correct. And there's a lot of human reliance when you are bouncing back and forth between platforms. And so that ability to consolidate all that activity into one platform where you make a change one place and it happens in the rest of your ecosystem eliminates all that hours and that time that is spent doing those things and making sure that your systems are updated appropriately.
Right. And with Epay, obviously that goes away. You're in one platform. It communicates with your TMS. It also allows you to scale your operations. Without Epay, all you're going to be doing is throwing more bodies at the problem. You're going to have more people who are answering the phone, handling emails, handling the audit, shuffling the paperwork. Epay removes all that and it allows you to have a brokerage that can scale to 4 or 5 times in size without having it before you have to add another body.
Absolutely. And if you're still cutting checks, if your brokerage is still cutting checks, we know that's a huge pain too, that Epay completely eliminates. As we said, 100,000+ carriers and factoring companies that are in the system today. And for all of those carriers and factoring companies, we have bank accounts on file and Epay makes payment via ACH.
And they're familiar with the process. So it makes it easy for any broker to get set up and utilize those same 100,000+ carriers and factors that are already in the system.
Right. So
and using
new brokers to the platform get to benefit from your years and decades of accumulating that information, vetting it. We have tier 1 support where we're making calls out to carriers if they make bank account changes. Fraud is a huge topic of discussion in the industry right now. And Epay is helping with that because we're calling that FMCSA phone number to verify if a bank account has changed in Epay, which is just another layer of support for your team that ultimately you would have to hire someone or pull someone out of their workflow. We take that work off your plate so that you never really have to think about it.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the big parts of what we were excited about with the OTR acquisition is that you share the same philosophy we do about customer service, right? We always pick up the phone. We're always responsive, and OTR is the same way. And so I think any client that comes on to either of our platforms is going to continue to experience that top-notch customer service as a differentiator.
Every issue is the biggest issue in the world to the person that you're talking to. And so if you don't have the philosophy that you're listening to someone's concerns, whether you might think it's a small concern or a big concern, it's big to whomever is calling you, right? If they're taking time out of their day to call you, I equate it to, if I can deal with a chat or I can email, great. But if I really want a resolution quickly, sometimes I just got to get on the phone and call. If I want to talk to Delta because I got issues, I want to be able to talk to a human being and I want them to be able to resolve it for me. I don't want to sit on hold for hours and hours and hours, like the traditional cable companies if you need to chat to somebody. So we've always had a passion for answering the phone, responding to customers, being available. Logistics is a 24/7 industry, so we feel like we got to be on and available pretty much 24/7, 365.
Totally agree.
So we've talked a lot about how the Epay platform can reduce billing and settlement inaccuracies by 99%. But what we're actually here to demonstrate is how Epay makes that possible. I'll kick it over to Jason to kind of run through the 3 core pillars we're going to be covering today.
Yeah, basically it all starts with the audit-proof invoicing concept. Starting with the TMS data, we push an invoice out to the carrier or factor, and we do that so they can A, verify the rate, and B, submit that proof delivery. And when that proof delivery is submitted, it goes directly to that invoice, which removes that inaccuracy or the need to chase down the POD from a carrier and try to map it to a transaction.
Yeah, and ultimately that leads to getting your PODs faster, being able to verify that the load's been delivered, being able to get your documents into your customers' hands more quickly. So speed's really, really important. And ultimately, if you can deliver your documents and your invoices to your customers more quickly, you can drive down those day sales outstanding, you can get paid more quickly. And in the current market, as we all know, cash flow is extraordinarily important. And so the quicker you can get the process kicked off and moving and get all those documents consolidated and audited, the more quickly your cash is realized.
Right, and Epay takes those documents from the payable, automatically applies them to the receivable, invoices the customer out automatically, saving you that additional step and headcount.
Absolutely, and that's kind of the third principle here, skipping around just a little bit, but that's that connectivity between the AR and the AP motion. At the end of the day, the same documents are used during the carrier invoicing process that are going to be used to bill your customer. Obviously, certain documents are not going to be sent to the customer, such as the rate confirmation. And so those are all classified in the platform, but they're automatically bundled, consolidated, and then sent to your customer. And so what the result of that is, you only have to have one team doing consolidated work in one process in Epay. And then the after effect of that is an AR process that effectively, or a customer invoicing process that effectively runs itself and puts itself together. So the second pillar that we're going to be covering today is the fact that Epay provides an unprecedented level of carrier and factor interactivity. Other platforms and other brokers that aren't necessarily using technology in their back office are fielding these requests, these disputes, these questions via email and phone and back and forth. And so that creates a whole heap of problems, right?
If you disconnected.
It's disconnected. There's no lack of control, or there's a total lack of control. There's a total lack of visibility, right? And so when you have a phone call with a carrier who says, you need to pay me a couple $100 for detention, or, hey, did you get my lumper receipt? It's very hard to document that conversation in your TMS or in some system of record. And so in Epay, all of those interactions are not only facilitated, but documented. Carriers can go in, they can send notes to your back office team. They can dispute charges within the platform, which we're going to cover. And so all of that happening within that one consolidated interface really allows you to simply dig in. If you ever have a question about a load in the future, you can go in, see everything that happened with just a couple of clicks.
Right, and it's on both sides. So the broker can see it, the carrier can see it, the factor. And that allows anybody to get up to speed if somebody's on vacation or just doesn't understand what the issue was. Somebody's trying to step in to help facilitate it. You've got the entire story there.
It's a great point too. So on the screen, you can kind of see the main differences between audit-proof invoicing in Epay and traditional invoicing that the vast majority of freight brokerages are using today. I think the primary difference that we love to kind of bring attention to is the fact that audit-proof invoicing is by nature a proactive process and a proactive workflow where we're soliciting the documents from a carrier associated with only that single load, instead of your traditional reactive workflows, both of how brokers are handling their back office by themselves, as well as some other technology solutions in market where they're fielding a bunch of inbound inquiries into a general mailbox, and then they're responsible for fishing through them and figuring out and being reactive to the carrier or someone else kicking off that process.
And when you're reactive, you have to figure out, is it a duplicate? Did I receive this already? Is it a legitimate invoice? Is it actually something that a carrier of mine did for a customer of mine? Or is it inaccurate in any way? I have to look at that data because it's coming from an outside source that I don't necessarily trust.
Did it come from the correct party, right? Did it come from the right carrier? Epay is soliciting that information from verified email addresses or verified portal logins.
You only have access to that invoice if you were assigned to it by the broker.
So that's an extra layer of security that audit-proof invoicing provides.
Right.
Now that we've walked through what audit-proof invoicing is, we're going to throw it over to one of our operations managers, Mackenzie Stevens, who is awesome to really demonstrate how it happens in the platform.
Yeah, from a broker's perspective, she'll walk you through what a typical broker would see on an invoice process.
Hey guys, my name is Mackenzie Stevens, an operations manager here at OTR Solutions. We're going to be walking through a typical broker workflow navigating the Epay portal. When a broker logs into Epay, the homepage displays a few key dashboards so that they're able to view the status of everything at a glance. Brokers can see all payable and receivable transactions by status, see funds coming in and out of their account for the past 5 days, and plan funds for the upcoming 5 days. See how many transactions have missing documents, and see any discounts that may be expiring. To manage all of their payables, they're going to do so under the Payables menu. which is divided by statuses, the first being pending. Pending transactions show brokers all of the invoices that have been released from their TMS to Epay's portal. Brokers can view which transactions haven't yet been accepted by the carrier, or maybe are missing or have incomplete documents. The white P icon indicates that the invoice is missing documents, and the red X icon indicates that the invoice has been rejected. The broker can go into the invoice and add notes or set automatic reminders to notify the carrier of the missing documents. Or the broker can go into the invoice and override to push through transactions if necessary. Once the required documents have been submitted and the carrier has accepted the invoice will move to the invoiced list. This is where the brokers spend a majority of their time. Once an invoice is moved to the list, the system will flag the documents for classification. The blue P indicates that the documents have already been classified. Any invoices with a white P indicates that documents have not yet been classified. On the right side of the list, brokers can see the approval level and the person that signed for that approval of the classified documents. To review the classification of documents, brokers can click on the blue P. From this view, brokers can review how each document was classified by the system and make changes if they decide to. They are able to click into the file to review in greater detail and can make any changes to the classification. Once they are done reviewing the classifications, they can return to the invoice and make their decision to approve it for payment or reject it. If it's rejected, the broker can add a note to tell the carrier why it's being rejected. If it's approved, the invoice can move automatically to the approved list. Epay will schedule a payment date, notify the carrier, and send an update back to the TMS with any changes that may have been made to the transaction. Ultimately, Epay is able to automatically invoice the customer for the broker by using the documents that were submitted by the carrier and classified by Epay. This automatic receivable process ensures that when the pay date arrives, Epay will process the payment and the transaction will move to the paid list. Epay processes the payment by transferring the funds from the broker's bank account directly to the carrier's and updates the TMS to show the payment has been completed. At any time, the broker can click into any invoice to review the full audit history, add their own notes, or supply additional documentation. And that's the typical workflow for a broker using Epay's portal.
Thanks, Mackenzie. That was great.
Yeah. And one of the biggest questions we have from brokers, is will my carriers or factors do this, right? There's some skepticism. We've already established we have well over 100,000 carriers and factors in the system that have been using this for many years. And then we have the issue sometimes of brokers wondering whether or not a carrier can comply. Is it too difficult for them? We're not asking the carrier to do anything that they're not already doing today. And we have an immense amount of flexibility on how the carrier can interact with the system. We're going to show you a video of the most basic or foundational way that a carrier can interact, which is simply receive an email notification that an invoice is ready and a request to upload your proof delivery documents. We're going to kick it back over to Mackenzie to walk us through that process as well.
We're going to be walking through a typical carrier workflow navigating the Epay portal. First, a broker updates their TMS that a load has been delivered, which communicates with the Epay system to create an invoice. This will then generate an automatic notification to the carrier. The carrier receives this pending invoice notification via email, which prompts them to either email back their delivery documents directly or to log into Epay to review the invoice. Once they've logged into Epay, the carrier can see a dashboard with the status of all their transactions and the dollar amount expected to be paid. To manage the new invoice, carriers simply go to the receivables menu and select pending. They can see the entry and the summary of that transaction on their pending list. To manage it, they click on the green eye icon to view the invoice. Carriers can upload or email their documents, review payment details like the payment terms, options, and the dollar amounts listed, and review the shipment details. If everything looks correct, they click Accept Invoice. It's that easy. The transaction will then move to the invoiced status, which confirms for the carrier that they have successfully invoiced the broker. The white P icon will appear next to each transaction to confirm that the proof of delivery documents have been received by the Epay system. Carriers are also able to review the expected pay date from this view. Once the broker approves the invoice for payment, it'll move to the approved list. Carriers can expect to receive an email notification letting them know that the broker has approved the invoice and has confirmed a pay date. When the payment date arrives, the carrier will receive payment directly to their bank account. When Epay processes the payment, it will also automatically move the transaction to paid and send a notification to the carrier. At any time, the carrier can click into any invoice to review the full audit history, add their own notes, or supply additional documentation. And that's the typical workflow for a carrier using Epay's portal.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great demonstration of how the Epay invoicing process is a true win-win for both carrier and broker.
Right. And we just showed you how easy it is for a carrier to get their documents into the system to verify their rates and to, get the payment as efficiently and quickly as possible with control. This helps in a lot with the relationship with the broker.
So what about the situations where the load doesn't go perfectly according to plan, or a carrier maybe thinks that they should be paid something more than what the broker, is expecting to pay? And we all know things happen in transportation. So to demonstrate how Epay handles those types of situations, we're going to kick it to Mackenzie one more time to demonstrate the request change and dispute process within the Epay platform.
We're going to be walking through the Epay workflow for when a carrier has a dispute. Let's say everything isn't perfect and the carrier has a dispute on the invoice that was presented to them. First, the carrier navigates to Pending from the Receivables menu. They click on the green eye icon to view the invoice. In this example, the carrier believes that there is a charge missing, so they can go to the top of the page and click on Request Change. This allows them to add a new amount, such as detention, and present that to the broker for review. With this proactive workflow, the broker knows about the additional charge in advance of approving the invoice, and the carrier ensures they get paid correctly the first time. To successfully submit the change request, the carrier is required to enter a note and can scroll to the top to upload a document. Click Continue to review the details of the dispute before clicking Save to submit it. The transaction is immediately moved to the carrier's disputed list. The transaction displays a white C icon indicating that the dispute has been opened and the broker has been notified. This list also records the entry date and change date. Now we'll walk through the broker's experience. When the carrier submits a dispute, the broker will be alerted via email. The broker will be able to view the disputed transaction and their disputed list under Payables. Brokers can view the disputed transaction and the disputed list and click on the white C icon to view the details. In this example, the broker sees that the carrier has requested $150 for detention time and that it's unresolved. They can go ahead and approve that by either clicking the $150 or typing some other amount in the approved amount box. To save changes, click Save. Brokers can scroll down to see the revenue expense summary. In this example, the broker has a $150 loss that they haven't billed the customer for yet. Let's take care of that. This can be resolved by the broker letting Epay automatically apply the charge, or the broker can manually apply it. For this example, we're going to walk through how brokers can manually apply it. The broker can add a note like Detention Approved and click on Continue and Save. The system now reflects that we've successfully increased the payables amount from $2,503.40 to $2,653.40. With Epay Centralized AR and AP management, brokers can reduce the risk of billing the wrong amount because Epay can automatically apply changes to the receivable prior to billing. To reduce the broker's profit loss, the broker can select to override the acceptance of the invoice to the carrier. Click Save and navigate to the receivable. The broker is now able to make an edit to the customer bill. The broker clicks Add, and in this example, adds $175 for detention time. Expand the revenue and expense summary section to review. To click Continue, the broker submits a note. Ultimately, the broker's profit and loss has been retained and the correct invoice amounts have been sent to the customer and carrier. All sides are happy. After the dispute has been resolved, the carrier can log in and find the transaction under Receivables in the invoiced list. The carrier can click on the white eye icon to view the invoice details to review the new charge added and the confirmed pay date. In the end, the carrier gets the correct amount paid to them on the first time without having to do anything additional, like short pays or balance due follow-ups.
Yeah, great job. Thanks, Mackenzie. So One of the key tenets of Epay, again, is to centralize the AP and the AR management. I've always said by solving your AP problems, you're actually solving your AR problems. So how we do that is when you have disputes like we just saw in that last video, we can apply that to the carrier payable and then automatically, in many cases, apply that to the receivable so that you're billing your customer correctly the right time and you're avoiding having to go back to them and ask for additional funds.
Yeah, based on configurations that are set by that broker. We've talked a lot about flexibility. Brokers have, just like all carriers and brokers do things differently, customers approach things differently as well. Every shipper, whether or not they're paying for detention or paying for lumpers or all the other aspects of managing that carrier relationship, Epay kind of ties it all together in one nice bow so that it's easy to go in and see, hey, these are my interactions with the carrier. This is how it's affecting my ability to bill the customer. And you're not having to, once again, worry about those syncing issues.
Right, and then we can invoice your customer in any number of different ways. They do not need to be part of the Epay platform. They don't need to be members or pay you through Epay. We can bill them via email, via EDI 210, directly to their portal, saving the broker a lot of manual steps that they're probably going through today. And that's another key part of the flexibility that we provide. One of the other things that was really excited about the acquisition that OTR made this year is just the ability we now have to provide working capital solutions to our brokers and customers that we didn't have prior to that acquisition. So to demonstrate that, we have Jonathan McCormick,
also known as JMac here at OTR, to dive into how that AP and AR gives us the ability to deploy vast amounts of kind of integrated working capital solutions to brokerages.
Hey guys, how's it going? Jonathan McCormick here, Vice President of Brokerage Services over at OTR Solutions. Today we're going to dive into one of Epay's core differentiators, which is the centralized AP and AR management module. So you think about it, in a perfect world, receiving invoices from your carriers or factors and then invoicing your shipping partners would be a breeze. All parties would be in agreement every time. There would never be any disputes over the details of the invoice or the amounts that are owed, and you could seamlessly manage your payables and receivables, right? We all know that's just really not realistic in our industry. There's always bumps in the road that interrupt this perfect process. Invoicing disputes come up for a number of different reasons, causing headaches between managing the updated invoice details on both the AP and AR side, and potentially even having to issue additional invoices to correct prior incorrect transactions. Brokers are managing all of this today while also answering endless calls and emails from their partners trying to get an update on payment status. There's absolutely a better way to do this. With Epay Manager's unique process of synchronizing the AR and AP data, brokers are able to manage both sides of the transaction within one centralized system, giving you guys the peace of mind that you'll always invoice your customers correctly the first time and protect your bottom line. So I just went over a lot. Your first question is probably, how does this work? The key component to centralizing the AP and AR management inside of Epay is that the updates to the payable can automatically be applied to any receivable, all within inside one portal. What this is going to do is drastically reduce the risk of billing your customers incorrectly, or even worse, having to rebill your customers for additional charges that they may or may not approve. The workflow that we're talking about now perfectly complements Epay's audit-proof invoicing concept, in which the carrier has to first review the details of an invoice and either agree or submit to a dispute before you, the broker, review or pay out the invoice. What this means is that any potential dispute is caught early on and dealt with before any payment has ever been issued, ensuring that you're paying the carrier or factor the proper amount every time, invoicing your shipper partner correctly the first time, every time, and eliminating many of the cumbersome and clunky processes you may be using to minimize short pays or rebills today. Once the amounts are finalized, all of these updates are then communicated back to your TMS so that your system of record reflects any changes made inside of Epay without any duplicative workflows. Epay has made the AP and AR invoicing process as close to perfect as possible so that you can get out of your email inbox, quit answering the phone, and get back to focusing on the revenue-driving aspects of your business. What all this is doing ultimately is protecting your bottom line. So in addition to increasing the accuracy and streamlining the invoicing process, this centralized management of AP and AR has another major benefit that we haven't discussed yet, and that's protecting your profit on the load and ensuring that you always have a positive bottom line. Built into the Epay system is going to be a revenue and expense summary section for every invoice, both on the AP and AR side, as well as a full audit trail of who is making an update and when, who is approving it, and who's requesting it. This ensures the broker has full visibility into the times that changes are made, how the changes may impact their load overall, and then in effect impact their bottom line. So since Epay is now allowing you to easily review any changes on the payable and the impact it may have, you can seamlessly update the receivable to your customer and pass that information or cost along to your customer responsibly before you ever have to rebill that invoice. This flexibility is one of the cornerstones of Epay's approach to the most accurate broker payments platform on the market today. And another exciting feature, with OTR's acquisition of Epay Manager, we also now have the ability to offer robust working capital solutions easily inside of the platform. The working capital solutions can be toggled on or off as needed on a customer by customer basis or even by the payment type. So whether you're processing a quick pay to a carrier or whether you're wanting to stretch out your traditional payment terms, you now have highly flexible liquidity options and the ability to drive new revenue streams. So partnering with Epay and OTR for your working capital needs is giving you access to a partner that lives and breathes the logistics industry. We understand the impact that cash flow can have on your operations and have the ability to mobilize large amounts of capital faster than traditional banking institutions you're familiar with today. So to tie all of this together, Epay is now delivering you a centralized AP and AR management workflow that's allowing you to eliminate the swivel chair integrations you may be using today, increasing the efficiency of your back office processing, and also giving you working capital and liquidity options that have never been available before. All of this with the goal to make you a more efficient broker that can focus on revenue driving aspects of the business and spend less time on the tedious back office processes that you know today.
Awesome job, J-Mac. To kind of summarize all the capabilities of those working capital solutions, I'd love to point out OTR has been working with freight brokers and extending credit to freight brokers for more than a decade. So it's already an expertise of ours. The Epay platform just allows us to do it in a much more seamless way, because at the end of the day, AP and AR are the main things that brokers are going to have to deal with working capital issues on. And so the visibility that the Epay platform gives us to know when a carrier payable is coming due or when you should be billing your customer really gives us the ability to deploy that working capital without a bunch of extra work and having to rely on a finance team to build borrowing bases and all the other things that banks generally require. Our industry expertise can allow us to put it work.
Yeah, we both understand the industry to a great degree. We understand what everybody's needs are. We understand the flexibility. And there's a number of solutions that can be applied within Epay with or without working capital.
Yeah, no one size fits all.
Right.
Once again, I keep going back to that, but it really is, if you want to, we're hyper-focused on pleasing our customers and developing solutions that are actually good fits for them, not just good fits for maybe what we think they should be doing. So we're getting creative with brokers to find their pain points, find the best ways to deploy this working capital to keep their operations running smoothly.
Right.
So in conclusion, we really want to focus on a couple of key takeaways, right? What matters to a brokerage's business? First of all, what's going to save them money in their back office? And so what Epay does is it allows back office team members to process 3 to 5x the number of invoices per rep, which is just a massive amount of savings.
Right.
And so, most brokerages that we talk to are focused on growing. And as they grow their invoice count or their load count, and as they grow their customer relationships, they don't want to have to worry about if their back office is going to be able to keep up.
Right, or hiring a lot of people.
Exactly. And so Epay gives them that peace of mind and that capability to keep up with their growth and their aspirations as entrepreneurial business people as they scale their business.
And also, obviously, we want to keep their costs down. We can receive a decrease in the cost per load through early quick pay discounts that they're receiving, working capital that we could provide, and just the cost savings of elements that we remove from the AP and the AR process.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, you got your gross margin, and then you got, the cost that you're paying that eats into that gross margin. And so any incremental dollar or dollars that we can take and remove from a broker's cost per load, which Epay has proven to reduce by 40 or 50%, go straight to the bottom line for the profitability of that broker.
Right, and a significant number of our brokers are actually making money in Epay Manager as opposed to having to cost them anything.
Absolutely. And then, you saw it in the title, so it's not news to anyone, but Epay, facilitates a 99% decrease in disputed invoices. So you're not having to go back. Things move really fast in logistics. I certainly can't remember what I was doing 30 or 45 days from right now. And when brokers are processing thousands of loads a week or thousands of loads a day, in some particular cases with Epay customers, they can't be going back and rehashing loads that delivered 35, 45, 60 days ago. That's going to have massive detractors from their profitability and their ability to have really, really strong relationships with customers. So, the disputed invoices piece obviously is critical, and we feel like Epay is a unique solution that delivers more benefit than anything else in the marketplace. So we're going to flash a QR code up on the screen now. Get your phones out and start scanning. We'd love to chat and dive through a deeper demo of the platform. We're available. We're ready to go. You already met McKinsey. You already met JMac. They're ready to pick up the phone, ready to respond to emails and get some demos. If you're a TMS that is interested in integrating with Epay, you can also use this QR code to reach out and establish contact and get some conversation going.
And right now we're going to start taking questions from our audience.
All right. So first question comes from Taylor Monks, who's the CEO of Basic Block, another factoring company in the industry, and he was asking about integrations with Epay from a factoring company perspective. I'm actually talking to Taylor later today, so we'll be able to dive into the specifics. But obviously, OTR being a carrier factoring company for a very long time, we're used to what it takes to verify invoices and check payment status and all of those things that can be helped a ton with integrations. So we're definitely very focused on continuing to expand those capabilities. We have the capabilities today, which, like I said, we'll be talking with Taylor about. But the idea, as we talked about over the course of the webinar, is to make everybody's lives throughout the supply chain more efficient. And that's done not with passing emails back and forth, but instead integrations. The Epay platform is based off of APIs, which I know was his specific question. So that definitely is a focus for us and going forward. Maddie, we got some other questions.
We do. First one here, will it be difficult to get my carrier set up with Epay?
So the question was, will it be difficult to get my carrier set up with Epay? We covered that a little bit during the webinar, but the answer is no. We have over 100,000 carriers and factors in the system that are already acclimated into how it works. We've taken great pains to make it simple for them with a web-based application as opposed to having an app that they need to download or install. So it makes it easy for them to get started from whatever device that they're utilizing. And then for a broker, it's as simple as connecting that TMS ID to the payee's profile to get them set up and running.
Yeah, and in conversations we've had with brokers over the course of the last couple of months, large enterprise, multi-billion-dollar brokerages, we've seen that we have a 95+% match rate between carriers and Epay and carriers that they've loaded over the course of the past year. So a very, very small amount are going to have to go through the quote-unquote, registration process, which is a couple of clicks. It's where we get bank information, obviously, but very, very easy. And we touched on this as well, but a big stat for us at the factoring side of the house is 60% of our carriers used to engage via emailed invoices. Now all of them, by and large, 99+%, are engaging with the type of portal and upload type of functionality that Epay also facilitates.
Yeah, and then for new carriers, it's important to note we have great partners with onboarding companies.
That's a good point.
That as those new carriers come into your environment as a broker, they can automatically be added into Epay touchless for the broker.
So we kind of pre-register them from the brokerage side. They just have to go in, drop their bank account in, and they get access to all the information that obviously we've talked about that Epay gives them, the visibility and the transparency on load details and amounts.
Yep.
What else do we have, Maddie?
Awesome. We actually have a couple of questions in the chat. So first one is from Jorge. Does the tool have charges per transaction only, or does it have a recurring fee?
Does the transaction have recurring charges only?
Are you talking about how Epay is priced in the marketplace? Yeah, so generally speaking, it's a transaction fee, but it's not on invoices that come into the platform. It's on things that are actually approved and paid out. And so, a conversation we've had with a lot of brokers is if you have to cancel a transaction or do something that doesn't get to that end state of actually finalizing at the end of the day, then you're not charged for it at all. So that's kind of how the pricing is set up.
That's right.
Awesome. We have another question in the chat. This one's from Howard. His company uses My Carrier portal to onboard new carriers.
My carrier packets, I would assume.
Yes.
Yep.
Is there ability for carriers to set up with Epay through MCP? Could you discuss this more?
Sure. So Howard asked if we are integrated with My Carrier packets and how that works. And the answer is yes. It's a seamless integration. Quite simply, as the carrier does their normal onboarding through My Carrier packets with a new broker, their system will query our database to find out that carrier is already a member. And if they are, it'll add them into that broker's network. If they're not, as Clayton described earlier, we ask them for a few additional pieces of information like their bank, and that will be fed in Epay and create a brand new registration on the fly so the carrier doesn't have to go into a second spot to register.
Yeah, so no work if you use MCP, RMIS, Highway, those carrier onboarding platforms. No work on your side to get those carriers onboarded and registered.
Awesome. Next question from ahead of time. My TMS isn't with Epay now. Is that an issue to sign up?
So
No is the short answer. I can let Jason kind of talk about that since he's been doing TMS integrations for a couple decades now.
Yeah, so the question was whether or not if your TMS isn't already integrated with us, is that an issue? And the answer is no, it's not. We have a plan in place. We know how the integrations work. The touch points are very similar from TMS to TMS. We basically are getting data out of the TMS, allowing it to process an Epay, and feeding it back to the TMS. So we're more than happy to work with any new TMS provider. The more partners we have, the better it is for everybody, and we can get that in motion as quickly as you'd like to.
Yeah, we have a pattern established for integrating with TMSs and a team of developers and technical resources that are ready to go to get those integrations spun up really quickly and get you active and saving money.
Awesome. Next question from ahead of time. What makes Epay different than other competitors?
So the question was, what makes Epay different from our competitors?
Yeah, I think we touched on a lot of that stuff in the webinar, but fundamentally, if you leave today with nothing else, it's really about the fact that structurally it's set up to be a proactive workflow instead of a reactive workflow. So instead of that email inbox and your team fishing through that, and we kind of talk about needle in the haystacks quite a bit, Epay is set up to proactively present those needles and kind of have you not have to worry about the haystack at all. And so the benefits of that upfront proactive workflow is all of the things that we dug in today, right? The 99% reduction in inaccurate billings, the dispute resolution in platform, which is really unique to Epay when we've talked to brokers that are either using other solutions or not using anything at all. There's a good list, but a lot of it is that proactivity.
Right, you start with the proactive, you solve a lot of other problems.
Yeah. So I think we're coming up close to time here, so we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us. We've enjoyed chatting about Epay and hope we can talk to a lot of you very, very soon.
Thank you very much.